All right, good afternoon. Appreciate you all making time today and coming out as we provide an update on school reopening. You know, we've all been dealing with COVID-19 over the last several months and are continuing to navigate this unprecedented point. We established a reopening task force. Obviously, you know, just to take it back to last week, our board had a really robust conversation around reopening, which at the end of the day is very healthy for our community, as it's something that's top of mind for parents like myself, as well as school system employees and our community as a whole. And so we've established a reopening task force, established that last May, and they've continued to work alongside us in our decision making and really the things we should be thinking as we look at safely opening our schools in August as we did. I want to remind you, we were in school 84 days the first semester, the first large district in the state to reopen. We saw a major surge in cases as we entered the holidays and have had to navigate and adjust accordingly. We're very fortunate on our reopening task force to have a mixed group, that cross-section of folks that we think is extremely representative of our community. We've got parents, teachers, students that are a part of that, as well as school leaders. Myself. I'd like to just recognize a few of them that are here today. Ms. Jen Bronson, who has led our COVID-19 work. You may remember Keith Fogelman and Lieutenant Colonel Bill Brooks. Keith Fogelman did retire, and Lieutenant COVID sent him home. I'm just playing. He'll get me for that. But he did retire after many years of work. But Jen Bronson has stepped in and done a phenomenal job of really corralling us and keeping us focused. Ms. Aislinger, who is a parent of a student. We have several parents that are on the reopening task force that are part of that work, because we know it's important to get parent voice as we continue to do our work. Dr. Keisha Carson, who is the principal at Eastlake Academy, has done a phenomenal job leading our schools as representative of one of the leaders that is on that task force. And here to my right, your left, Dr. Charles Woods, who is one of two doctors, to include Dr. Adams, that medical expertise has been just absolutely remarkable and so incredibly helpful as we deal with what is and has been a novel virus that we're continuing to learn more about, and having that medical expertise just is paramount. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Woods to just share from the medical context what we're seeing and continuing to learn in regards to COVID-19, and then I will turn to he'll turn to Dr. Carson, who will share more insight around just from a school leader perspective, what we're thinking at a building level. Then I'll share some updates about reopening. So, Dr. Woods. And can I will also note, and he'll come up and speak here in just a moment, but our board chairman, Mr. Joe Wingate, is here, who will come up and share just some thoughts as I conclude.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson, and I will say it's been a privilege to be a part of this task force, and I just want to thank all of our colleagues. I think Dr. Adams and I both feel like we've learned far more from the rest of you than we've contributed, and I think your insights and planning all along have just been phenomenal. So what we know at this point is that, I guess the first thing to say is every decision that's made, there's not really a 100% risk-free path possible in terms of reopening or staying closed. There are consequences to all of the options that are there in terms of children not being in school, the consequences of that, to being in school with possible infections amongst some of the students as well as some of the teachers and staff. So there's no zero pathway. That said, we feel like we know a lot more now than we did 6 or 8 months ago, and we will continue to know more. So this is a real-time effort looking at trends over time to make decisions. We know that the 7-day average in Tennessee is coming down. It was, I guess, the peak in the state looks like it was made of cases, looks like it might have been almost a month ago. So the trends of new cases, the trends of hospitalizations, and I think even deaths are trending down both locally and statewide, and mirroring much of the country at this point. So that is good news. And certainly hospitalizations can lag behind new cases, so we'll see those trends fall a little bit later, but I think in the county we're beginning to see that in the hospitals at this point. So in the summer, when the gating criteria were first developed, Those were based on the best available information and interpretation of that at the time, and they were designed to be safe. We certainly had a lot of in-school time for students during the fall, and the school system tracked the infection rates amongst students and staff, and those were pretty low. And interestingly, just today, after this press conference was planned, the CDC, in something they call their Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, has just released information of a study of schools in Wisconsin, a school system in Wisconsin, where they had in-person class 13 weeks in a row. They followed very closely, and out of about 4,800 students, they only had 7 cases that were transmitted within school, and those were then within single classrooms primarily, and none of 654 staff were infected during that time at school, and this was a very careful analysis. So this mirrors, we think, the experience we had here. So based on the downward trends that we're seeing statewide and locally, and these types of information, it seems appropriate to begin to look at going back and how that might be phased in, and maybe with not too slow a pace, but certainly taking other logistics and things into account that Dr. Johnson and his colleagues can well determine. And the other thing is, no matter which decision ends up, you can, over time, we're going to know more if something changes, if we go back and everybody's in and we see infections start to rise, if there's an impact of this new variant that's been out there. We're not seeing an impact of that locally right now. That doesn't mean we won't, but any decision that's made can be revisited. And that's frankly the right approach, I think, to take at any point as we learn more to adjust accordingly. And I think that's what's being done now. We've got more information. Maybe we can adjust accordingly. Maybe we don't need to be bound by the tracker guides as tightly as we have been because of what we know now, which doesn't mean that was an incorrect decision earlier. It just means we know more today. So with that, I will stop and introduce Lakeisha Carson, who is principal of East Lake Academy of Fine Arts, and also another reopening task force member. So, Ms. Carson.
Thank you very much. I too consider it a privilege to be a part of the task force with Dr. Johnson, Dr. Woods, and all of our stakeholders that have been a part of it. We've been meeting, started out probably twice a week to once a month to, as things persisted and we gained more information, to sometimes daily. And I appreciate that, because in order to be transparent about what's going on and do what's in the best interest of all students, we work hard to consider all aspects, all data, all information, everything coming from families, principals, and teachers. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Johnson for allowing the input, because he did not have to allow the input, so I truly appreciate that. But I want to speak to the parents, to the teachers, to my fellow colleagues. As you know, school, most people think the first thing about principals, we're all about academics. But in reality, safety comes first. And safety can come in many forms. Right now, we're dealing with COVID-19. With that, I do believe that all of the safety strategies that the district put in place at the beginning of the year, with the mask, with having parents call in when their student is ill or keeping them at home, with washing hands, with social distancing, with all the parameters that we put in place and that have been followed by the leaders at Hamilton County, I truly believe that we're at a point to whatever decisions made that we will continue to follow those to allow us to be in school. As Dr. Johnson said, with 84 days the first semester, and following those protocols in its highest and its peak, as we continue to see the numbers go down, that we will be able to get back on track with learning. I, as many administrators, have concerns, but we truly understand that what's in the best interest of students is to be in class. We hear it from our parents, we hear it from our students on a daily basis. I can say I meet with my students at 7:30 every morning. First question they ask, when are we coming back to school? Ms. Carson, can I come today? No, you cannot come. So I know that whatever decision parents made, once we decide when we're coming back to school, know that you still have options to keep your child at home and continue with and home learning. Teachers will continue to do their best to provide the best education, whether it's in person or at home. So I truly thank each one of you for working together with us to make sure that we have a safe opening for our schools. Now I turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Ms. Carson and Dr. Woods for sharing. So to take it back to last Thursday night, our board passed a resolution in which they really charged and challenged us to look at our processes and make sure that we were intentional about getting students on campus as much as possible. I'll take some minutes off to speak a little bit. One thing I'll elevate is, for me, the superintendency is extremely important, but it's more important that I'm a great husband and father, and so I always look at it through the lens of what's best for my child, and what's best for my child is what's best for all 45,000 or so children that we have in the district. So I want to empathize with parents and say that I felt firsthand as I've had to do some redirecting over the last several days of my son in the virtual environment. It is critically important. We know the most impactful place and the best place for a student, and I've heard this from teachers and leaders across our district, is in front of a teacher in the classroom. Our teachers have been heroic. We started the year saying that, and I want to echo that. I want to make abundantly clear that the virtual environment for a teacher is no less challenging than the in-class, in-person environment. In fact, I would contend that it's more challenging. Teachers' hearts are to make sure that students are learning, and it is exponentially more difficult to make sure students are learning when I'm doing so virtually. But they also obviously have those safety concerns, not just for themselves, but for students, and we share those concerns. As our board charged us to look at how we could get to in-person as quickly as possible, and as we really brought in several different groups over the last few days, what we've really looked at is how we could keep the phase tracker intact, because it did allow us 84 days of in-person learning over the first semester, and following the numbers and the science we think are critically important. We firmly believe that that's of extreme importance. But as we continue to learn more, and we will continue to learn more, it's also appropriate to make the appropriate operational adjustments. And so obviously we are in phase 2. And so beginning this week, the adjustment we made, we heard a lot of feedback around grades 4 and 5. And so beginning next week, students in grades 4 through 5, K through 5, will be in class 4 days a week in phase 2. We also, in grades 6 through 12, students will be hybrid. As we continue to look, if we are in phase 2, the next week, February the 8th, our students in grades 6 through 8 will move to a 4 day a week cadence. We will continue to become more aggressive. If I could take you back through memory lane, what you would remember is that first semester, phase 1, we articulated that all students would be remote. We made adjustments at the mid-year point based on what we knew at that point in time, because our commitment was to get our earliest learners into school. So we made the adjustment to K3. We've continued to learn more, and so now we're making the adjustment to K5. And then obviously we'll look at 6-8. Our commitment early on in this process, one of the first things we shared about the continuous learning plan is that it's not a document that's set in stone, and that we will continue to review and evaluate over time. And so our commitment over the next couple, 3 weeks is to, one, monitor what's happening in our schools, but to continue to bring forward our reopening task force for consideration, in particular of K5, of how we can move those students potentially to a 5-day-a-week schedule. All that will be predicated on what transpires in schools, in classrooms, and how our case count transpires at the school-based level. Make no mistake, we want to be as aggressive with our operation and what we do in the classroom as we do the health. And so as aggressively as we're looking at making sure that our students are in the classrooms and have continued to make adjustments, we will have that same aggression in regards to making sure that we keep our students, our teachers, our employees safe. One other point I want to accentuate before I turn it over to our board chair, and then we will open to any questions you may have, is that there is a tipping point for the phase tracker. Obviously, we're changing operation, we're keeping the numbers intact, getting more aggressive with what we do operationally for our system. But there is a tipping point, and that tipping point really is as we get access to the vaccine for our employees. We've already had some access, our special ed teachers, our educational assistants that are in self-contained environments. Many of them, I was just on a call on the way over here with our teachers cabinet. There are many of our teachers who have had access to that vaccine in that initial group. The bulk of our teachers and employees are in the 1B group, and we know you can hear nationally and at the state level what's happening with the vaccine and the pace at which that's rolling out. As we get broad access to that, candidly, the active cases in the community will have less and less impact on our operation. I think, as Dr. Woods pointed out, one of the things that we continue and is oftentimes missed because there's so much focus on the active cases. One of the other things that we will continue to look at are hospitalizations and ICU rates. We know those are leading or lagging really indicators, but really important indicators for us in regards to determining what we can do to keep our schools safe. And so without any further ado, I want to turn to our board chairman. Again, I sincerely appreciate the work of our school board. It's a school board appreciation week. Not a better time to really elevate their importance as they have given a lot of trust to us in trying to make the best decisions possible. We don't take lightly that trust that has been extended. But in addition to that, they have really elevated their thoughts on the importance of getting students to on-campus learning. I will say this, and I said this last thing, but I will say this as he comes up. Our school system is extremely complex. We are urban, suburban, and rural. And so when you look comparatively at other systems across the state and the nation, even, we have an urban cross-section of our district, and when you look at other urbans, you don't necessarily see them with the ability to stand up the opening of school. And we've been very fortunate first semester to do that. We will enter cautiously here this second semester, and we will continue to accelerate learning because our teachers do an absolutely amazing job, and our leaders do as well of making sure, and our staff of making sure that happens. So, Chairman Wingate.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I just want to say on behalf of our board and personally that I just want to take this moment to thank all who've been involved in this process. I want to thank the Reopening Task Force for your continuing work, which began last summer. I want to thank you, school district leadership, for integrating operational procedures to minimize disruptions to teaching and learning. I want to thank you, teachers, for displaying resiliency, versatility, and professionalism in the way that you've conducted yourselves this semester in the face of unprecedented adversity and change. And I want to thank all the families for their support and level of engagement in each of their students' educational journeys. The efforts of all involved have been and are still greatly appreciated by our community, and we're here to assist in the continual improvement of the school district, and we do look forward with optimism to what the future holds. So thank you again for all that you've done and that you're continuing to do, and from our school board, we just want to say thank you.
So we'll open up this time to any questions that you all may have.
I'll start. I feel like these are the most important questions because they come straight from viewers who, went to ask these questions to you. So they're asking what's being done to expedite vaccines for teachers. I know you kind of mentioned it, but
Sure.
What are y'all doing?
It is a key strategy, okay? Make no mistake about it. Access to vaccines are a key strategy, and every time we have an opportunity to elevate that, we do. Personally, I've had a chance last week before last, to speak directly to State Commissioner Piercy. She was kind enough to take our call one evening on her way, maybe home or somewhere, and late one evening. And we have already developed a strategy for deployment. And so we are awaiting approval of one of our health partners, one-to-one, who operates clinics here in our system. As soon as we get that approval, we already have a plan to get the vaccine to campuses. Our goal is to make it as efficient and effective as possible for our employees to get access to the vaccine. We know there's a complete different operational disruption that's on the other end of them having to wait in lines to get the vaccine. And so we want to get it to them, give them the most access to it, and we've already got that plan developed and are just waiting on that approval and, most importantly, waiting on the vaccine.
What's being done to ensure schools are being cleaned under CDC guidelines?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of things. Our board, graciously approved an enhanced cleaning contract with a third party. We've got a regular contract that is a part of our general cleaning, and then we executed an additional contract with SMS to do our enhanced cleaning. Anytime we get a positive case in a building, we obviously immediately working with the principals. And there's a lot, in this conversation, if we got behind the curtain and saw the hours that our school leaders put into contact tracing, and Jen Bronson and that team put into contact tracing with the partnership of the health department, it's really been remarkable, and really would attribute a lot of that to us being able to remain open. But as soon as we get a positive case or know of a positive case, we do an enhanced cleaning in that building. Generally speaking, we're able to do that night. The biggest challenge is the contact tracing and the complexity of the contact tracing. At the elementary and middle grade bands, it's a little bit easier to do the contact tracing, a lot easier. At the secondary level, thus the nod to them being hybrid, it's much more complex because students are going across classes. They're a much more social age group, and we have to navigate that. So we'll continue with the enhanced cleaning through the duration of this school year. And obviously, we hope that as we look at this upcoming August, that we will just be able to have our normal custodial services being provided.
I know at the school board meeting, sorry, take all the questions. School board meeting on Tuesday, you all kind of mentioned this about third graders, and a lot of the school board members were concerned about the reading level. Did this decision have to do with that concern, and are you concerned about the third graders' reading level?
Well, to be abundantly clear, I work for the school board, right? So I'm extremely sensitive to their input and direction. They've made abundantly clear through their strategic plan that was adopted that the acceleration of third grade reading is a focus for us. We've set a Focus 5 target of 50% of our students being by 2023 proficient on that assessment, which is a literacy assessment, not just a reading assessment. So it's the student's ability not just to read, but to articulate what they've read and written, as well as being able to write it, right? And so you've got to read, you've got to write, you've got to articulate it, and it's multifaceted. And so statewide, you heard our governor speak to the importance of literacy. You've heard our state commissioner speak to the importance of literacy. You've also saw in last week a special session on education, which is abnormal, in which the legislators spoke to the importance of literacy. We echo that sentiment. When you look at fourth grade and you look at the NAEP, which is a nationally normed assessment, our system is at roughly 38%, whereas you see the state at about 34% and the nation at about 35%. And so, we know that third grade is a linchpin in ensuring that our students are successful. Our board took some courageous steps this last budget cycle in adopting high quality instructional material that's grounded in phonics and the science of reading, and making sure that our teachers, one of the biggest challenges we had, our teachers having access to those resources that are necessary in order to be successful. So we're proud of the steps we've taken. We'll continue to take steps because that's a focus, not just for us, but at the state level and nationally in regards to literacy. And so I guess to get back to your question, accelerating student achievement is always a focus. Literacy is fundamental to accessing math, social studies, science, etc. That's not to diminish the importance of any of those other subjects, but we look comprehensively at what we need to do as a district to make sure that our students are successful academically. So that's the driver for decision making, and that's our charge from the school board.
One of those things more interventionist?
Yeah, so as far as what we're looking at?
Yeah, do you think there would be a possibility to have more or resources towards that?
You're getting into budget season. It's a little bit early. So, we want to explore all options to make sure that our students are prepared to be post-secondary ready, right? And the exploration of all options means just that. And we've been committed to that, during my tenure, because our board has charged us in that way to be committed to that. And so, we want to look at whether it's interventionists, obviously the instructional materials, support and training for teachers. All those elements are really support and training for leaders. All those elements are really, really important. Our team has taken a really forward-facing approach in that. We're looking at districts across the nation that have done some innovative things. Neely Parker, our chief schools officer, we're actually meeting virtually. This new virtual world has opened up a whole new set of opportunities. And over the next couple of weeks, we're meeting with some leaders, some states and districts that have done just some phenomenal work in regards to literacy, and we want to continue that push.
You said earlier nothing set in stone when bringing students back into here personally, but is there anything like a rough outline or anything? Is there any set dates at all? Anything on that?
No, the data will drive our dates, right? And so what we are committing to is that on Monday, when our students return, all students in grades K through 5 will be here 4 days a week. Students in grades 6 through 12 will be hybrid. If we remain in phase 2, that next week, we will move students in grades 6 through 8 to a hybrid schedule. We have committed to ensuring that we continue to review the continuous learning plan and make the necessary adjustments to operationalize the elements that are critically important within our plan. So, here's the thing about COVID. COVID's a humbler. And the truth in it is, and you all have seen this, 2.5 weeks ago, we had 606 cases. On Saturday, we had 55. On Sunday, we had 89. So, you can't predict or project what's going to happen, unfortunately, with this virus. We know we're on a positive trend. We want that trend to continue. We've got to see, now that we're opening up school doors on Monday, we've got to continue to monitor what happens in our schools, and that will drive our decision making.
I know you sent out a survey to parents to get their feedback on maybe extended schools, summer school, just things like that. What do you plan to do with that information? What were some of those responses that y'all received?
I hadn't actually seen any of the responses yet. We'll review those over the next several days. Just went out last night. I've gotten a couple emails from parents, though, in full disclosure, that, go beyond that feedback. And I appreciate those. I've gotten 2 that obviously share concerns or in favor for things that we're looking at. So we're looking comprehensively at our calendar. One of the things, if you go back to the special session last week, one of the big points of conversation was around learning loss. One of the big points of conversation, obviously, was around literacy. Really, it's been legislated, essentially, that we, look at extended opportunities for students. And so we've been a district that's been committed to that. If you go back and you look at last summer, in the height of COVID-19, we stood up summer reach programs. They had about 2,000 students. They got 20 intensive lessons, and those were focused around, the standards to which we saw the most struggle as a district. And that also gave us some level of understanding operationally what we might do as we opened up our doors in August. And so we've always and will continue to remain committed to intervention and remediation as we, have tried to stay, and keep top of mind. So we will look at all things. We'll take that feedback. We'll do just like we do with any feedback session. A big part of my job is, I think a lot of times people feel like the superintendent is supposed to have every answer. The truth is I don't. The truth is my job is to get to every answer, and in getting to every answer, High Reliability Organizations has 5 principles, and one of those principles is deference to expertise. And so the entire establishment of something like a reopening task force is about the deference to expertise. And so my job every day is to get a bunch of input and to take all that input and synthesize it to try to make the best decisions to serve this community, to serve our children. And so we'll do the same thing with that survey. We'll take all that feedback and input. One thing we know about calendars, there's some similarities to calendars and COVID. We're going to cut C's out of the school system. But the truth of calendars and COVID is usually there's no clear-cut consensus, and at some point you have to make some decisions and make some recommendations. And so for us, we want to take all that feedback, provide a recommendation to our school board based on what we're hearing and what we understand to support children.
When schools are open in the fall, the local health department talked about the increasing cases among younger people, linked primarily to extracurricular activities, things outside of school. And then the CDC data that Dr. Woods talked about, that was released today, talked about cases primarily spreading extracurricular activities, sports, and having to limit those to keep kids in school.
Where are you going?
Is that something the county schools prepared to do in order to keep kids in the classroom?
Yeah, so I think we have a couple of things working with us here. As our winter sports begin to ramp down, because they are, obviously the governor has really, he's had 2 executive orders. He had one that was very restrictive of attendance. He had a second that was, that just came out a couple of weeks ago or so, that was a little less restrictive around attendance. Those restrictions will continue to follow with crowd control. Our schools have done, our principals and athletic directors and their teams have done a phenomenal job. I know I see Jim Bowl standing over there in the shadows that has ball games. They've done a great job with trying to manage that as much as we possibly can. I think as you begin to look forward into spring, speaking specifically to athletics, many spring sports are outdoors, and so we know the science says that'll help quite a bit. In regards to our other activities, the arts are important. STEM and robotics are important. One of the key points that I hadn't talked about, but is really integral to making sure students are successful is really supporting the whole child. And so I know I've spent a lot of time talking about third grade reading, but in truth, it's that social piece, it's that ability to connect with other learners, that ability to engage in activities that interest me, that keep me connected to the school environment. And so the mental health and well-being of our students is really important. Those extracurricular activities, I see more so as co-curricular, as a key part, an integral part of the school environment. So we want to make a press to do everything we can to offer those when and where it's safe. And we'll continue that, really going forward.
Okay, probably my last question, sorry.
It's okay, you're fine.
My mom's a teacher in Dallas, Texas, and around this time, she's a second grade teacher, around this time, she can kind of tell when students need to be held back because they've gone through a lot of the school period, or the school year, and she can tell. Do you have any idea about retention rates this year, or is it different? I mean, with COVID and you've got virtual, can you tell, or,
It's tough to tell right now. I think that's a really great question, something that we continue to dig in, really across the board. The virtual environment is tough for students. It's frankly, it's tough for teachers because I'm trying to assess a student through a screen and, and how do I make sure they're learning. And so we will know more in the days ahead in regards to, what we need to do to support students. I think it's really important, regardless of those things, that we look at offering extended opportunities for students, whether that be in the summer or during the school year, to close as many gaps as possible. We know there will be some across the board. We don't necessarily see the level of gaps that some maybe have reported, but we absolutely know and believe that we'll continue to have to support students, and we will do that during the course of the summer and as we get into this upcoming school year.
Do y'all have any other questions for any of our other task force members before we wrap up? All right. Appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you.
Thank you all.